Breaking up turns out not so hard to do. President Trump has declared he is officially pulling his endorsement of MAGA firebrand Marjorie Taylor Greene. The Georgia congresswoman has been demanding the release of the Epstein files and has criticized the president for spending too much time abroad. The president, has apparently heard enough, posting on Truth Social overnight that all wacky Marjorie Taylor Greene does is complain, complain, complain.
I think that her constituents aren't going to be happy. Already I have people calling me. They want to challenge her to a race in her district in Georgia. And, that's too bad. She's lost a wonderful conservative reputation. But when she says, don't go overseas, if I didn't go overseas, we might be in a war right now with China.
Meanwhile, President Trump is also upset with Congressman Thomas Massie, who also wants the Epstein files released. A Trump-aligned super PAC is spending $1 million on ads targeting the Kentucky Republican. Massie says his constituents understand his position.
When they're protecting pedophiles.
Okay, so you're scrolling through the news, right? Maybe grabbing coffee, checking your phone, and then bam, you see it. Judge orders immediate arrest. Trump allies flipping. Capitol chaos all over again. And you're thinking, wait, what? Another bombshell? Another twist in this never-ending saga? Yeah, except this time is different. This isn't some leaked memo or anonymous source whispering to reporters. This is a federal judge in open court ordering the arrest of a Trump attorney right there in the moment. Can you believe this? Like, the gavel comes down and suddenly there's actual handcuffs involved. That's not normal. That doesn't just happen in high-profile political cases. But it did, and it gets wilder. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Social media post by thanking the president and saying that she'd have U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton in Manhattan lead this new investigation. This is the same office that led the earlier investigations of Epstein and of Ghislaine Maxwell, who worked for Epstein and was convicted of charges that she aided in the trafficking of girls. We should note that the Justice Department this summer did an assessment of documents that's in their possession, and they determined that there were no additional defendants that could be charged in crimes associated with Epstein. And this new investigation also means, though, that Congress will likely have to wait much longer for any documents to be released, because there's an effort right now gaining steam in the House to force the release of those documents. But during an ongoing...
Because while that's going down, multiple Trump allies are quietly cutting deals, flipping, turning states' evidence, handing over documents, text messages, recordings, everything. People who were in the room during January 6th planning meetings. People who know what Trump knew when he knew it and what he said behind closed doors. They're talking now. And once one person flips, others follow. It's like dominoes, except each domino is carrying receipts. Think about that for a second. These aren't outsiders looking in. These are insiders with access to the real conversations, the actual planning sessions, the behind-the-scenes moments that never made it to the public. They know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking, and now they're showing prosecutors exactly where to dig. So let's pause here for a second. Why does this matter? Why should you care about another court drama when we've had, dozens of these stories over the past few years? Here's why. This judge didn't issue a warrant for later, didn't schedule a future hearing, didn't give anyone time to lawyer up or negotiate. The judge said, arrest him now, in the courtroom. That's a breaking point moment. That's a judge who's done playing games with delay tactics and legal gymnastics and people treating the court like it's some kind of joke. And when you combine that with Trump's inner circle crumbling, when the people who were loyal for years suddenly decide, yeah, I'm not going down with this ship, that's when things get real. Because these aren't random witnesses. These are people who sat in meetings, who typed the emails, who made the phone calls, who know exactly what happened and can testify to it under oath. Legal experts are calling this the most powerful kind of evidence in conspiracy cases. Why? Because insider testimony connects the dots. It takes all those scattered pieces, the speeches, the tweets, the suspicious timing, and ties them directly to intent, to planning, to knowledge of wrongdoing. You can't wave away testimony from someone who was literally in the room when decisions were made. You can't claim ignorance when your own aide is on the stand explaining exactly what you knew and when you knew it. That's the nuclear option in legal terms. And it's being deployed right now. And look, Trump's been in legal trouble before, right? We've seen indictments, we've seen trials, We've seen investigations that seem like they were going somewhere only to fizzle out or get delayed into oblivion. But this feels different. This feels like the walls are actually closing in, not just metaphorically, but literally. When a judge is so fed up that immediate arrest becomes the play, when people who built their careers on loyalty are suddenly more worried about prison time than staying loyal, that's a shift, a real one. Observers in the courtroom described it as a watershed moment, a turning point for accountability. Because for years, and be honest here, there's been this feeling that certain people are untouchable, that no matter what happens, no matter what evidence comes out, there's always another appeal, another delay, another legal maneuver to push things down the road. The system feels rigged sometimes, doesn't it? Like justice is something that happens to regular people, but somehow never quite catches up to the powerful and well-connected. But immediate arrest, that breaks the pattern. That says the court isn't waiting anymore. That sends a message that the rules actually apply to everyone, even if you're used to being above them. And here's the kicker. This isn't happening in isolation. Other courts are watching. Other judges are taking notes. The message being sent is clear. Obstruction has consequences. Contempt has consequences. Treating the judicial system like your personal playground has consequences. And those consequences are happening now, not someday in the distant future. So as Trump's allies flip and prosecutors gain access to documentation on January 6th, planning, internal communications, cover-up efforts, the investigation isn't shrinking, it's expanding. New names are coming up, new potential charges, new evidence that wasn't available before because people were too scared or too loyal to talk. But fear and loyalty have limits. And when you're staring down serious prison time yourself, when you realize the ship might actually be sinking, people make different choices. Self-interest kicks in, survival instinct takes over, and suddenly loyalty doesn't seem worth decades in federal prison. This is the story. Not just another legal headline, not just another court appearance. This is the moment where the careful construction of legal shields and loyal allies starts to crack, where judges stop accepting excuses, where insiders stop protecting secrets, where the whole carefully managed approach to avoiding accountability hits a wall. And we're going to break down exactly what happened, who flipped, why the judge reached this breaking point, and what it means for Trump and everyone still in his orbit. Because this is bigger than one arrest order. This is about whether the system can actually hold powerful people accountable, or whether we just keep watching the same show with no real ending. Let's get into it. All right, so let's rewind and set the stage here. Because to understand why this moment is so massive, you need to understand the context, the slow burn that led to this explosion. For years now, we've been watching legal cases around January 6th unfold, investigations, indictments, trials, and through all of it, there's been this core group of people around Trump who stayed quiet, who lawyered up, who invoked privilege or took the fifth, or just said nothing. The inner circle held, and that silence protected a lot of potential legal exposure. It's been like a wall of silence, carefully constructed and maintained. Everyone understood the game. Keep quiet, stay loyal, and weather the storm together. That was the strategy. And for a long time, it worked. But here's what most people don't get about conspiracy cases. Silence works until it doesn't, until someone breaks. And once that first person breaks, the whole strategy falls apart. Because now prosecutors have someone who can testify about conversations, about planning, about what people knew and when they knew it. And that makes the next person more likely to flip, and then the next. It's a cascade. It's like watching a dam crack. First there's a tiny leak, then a bigger one, then suddenly the whole thing gives way, and there's a flood. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Multiple Trump allies. We're talking people who were close, who had access, who were in sensitive meetings about January 6th. They've cut deals. They're cooperating. And in exchange for immunity or reduced charges, they're handing over everything. Documents, text messages, emails, voice recordings, whatever evidence they have that shows planning, coordination, knowledge of illegal activity. This is the nightmare scenario for anyone trying to defend against conspiracy charges, because you can argue about intent all day long when it's just public statements and circumstantial evidence. But when someone who is in the room says, yeah, we discussed this, here's what was said, here's what the plan was, that's game over. That's the kind of evidence that shreds reasonable doubt. Juries love insider testimony because it's concrete, it's real, it's not speculation or interpretation. It's someone saying, I was there, this is what happened, and here are the documents to prove it. You can't spin that away. You can't claim misunderstanding. The evidence speaks for itself. Now, while this cooperation is ramping up, we get to the courtroom drama, the moment that made headlines. A Trump attorney, not just any lawyer, but someone central to the defense strategy, gets held in contempt. And not the usual contempt where there's a fine or a future hearing. The judge orders immediate arrest. Right there, marshals moving in, handcuffs, the works. Can you imagine being in that courtroom? Like 1 minute you're arguing legal points, and the next minute federal marshals are taking someone into custody. Legal analysts said they never seen anything like it in a case of this magnitude, because judges usually bend over backwards to avoid this kind of dramatic confrontation, especially with attorneys. There's professional courtesy, there's collegiality, there's a whole system designed to give lawyers multiple chances before it gets to actual arrest. Courts don't want to create constitutional issues or give defendants ammunition for appeals, so they're careful, they're measured, they give warnings and opportunities to comply. But this judge was done. Sources say the attorney had been engaging in delay tactics, making misrepresentations to the court, possibly committing perjury. And the judge reached a breaking point, said essentially, enough. You want to obstruct this process? You want to treat this court with contempt? Fine, here are the consequences. And look, that matters beyond just one attorney getting arrested. It sends a message. It tells every other lawyer involved, we're not playing anymore. The days of endless delays and legal games are over. You want to represent these clients? Fine, but you're going to do it within the rules. And if you don't, there will be immediate consequences. No more warnings, no more second chances, no more professional courtesy extended to people who are actively trying to undermine the judicial process. This is what legal experts mean when they talk about accountability. It's not just about whether Trump himself faces charges. It's about whether the entire ecosystem of enablers, defenders, and participants faces real consequences for their actions. And for the first time in this whole saga, it's starting to look like maybe they will. The protective bubble is bursting. The assumption that lawyers can do whatever they want in service of their clients without facing personal consequences, that's being challenged. And it's creating a very different dynamic in these courtrooms. Now let's talk about why people are flipping. Because loyalty in politics is supposed to be everything, right? These were people who stood by Trump through everything. Through investigations, impeachments, media scrutiny, public backlash. So what changed? Self-preservation. That's what changed. When you're facing serious federal charges yourself, when you're looking at potential prison time, loyalty becomes a lot less appealing. And when you see other people flipping and getting deals, when you realize the prosecutors already have evidence from other sources, the calculation shifts. You're not protecting anyone at that point. You're just ensuring you go down too. And prosecutors know this. They know how to create these situations where cooperation becomes the smart play. They flip someone lower down, use that testimony to pressure someone higher up. And each person who flips gives them more leverage to flip the next person. It's a deliberate strategy, and right now it's working. The documentation these cooperating witnesses are providing is reportedly extensive. We're talking about evidence of January 6th planning meetings, internal communications about how to handle the aftermath, discussions about cover-ups and legal strategies. This isn't speculation or hearsay. This is documentary evidence paired with witness testimony. That's the gold standard in prosecution. It's what gets convictions. It's what convinces juries beyond a reasonable doubt. And here's where it gets really interesting. Legal analysts are saying this cooperation is exposing criminal conduct that wasn't even on the radar before. New incidents, new participants, new potential charges. Because when people start talking, really talking, they don't just confirm what prosecutors already suspected. They reveal things nobody knew about. They mention meetings that weren't on any calendar. They reference communications that investigators didn't know existed. They identify participants who weren't previously implicated. The investigation expands rather than contracts. This is why Trump's remaining loyalists are reportedly in panic mode, because nobody knows who's flipped or what they've said. Nobody knows what evidence has been handed over. There's no way to coordinate a defense when you don't know what the prosecution knows. And every day, more people are making the calculation that cooperation is better than loyalty. The uncertainty is toxic. It breeds paranoia. It makes everyone suspicious of everyone else, and that accelerates the collapse. Commentators are calling this a historic reckoning, a watershed moment for accountability. Because after years of watching powerful people seemingly operate above the law, this is what actual consequences look like. Not threats of consequences, not strongly worded statements, actual arrest orders, actual cooperation agreements, actual evidence being used in actual proceedings. And other judges are watching, other cases are taking note. The broader legal community is seeing that yes, you can hold people accountable even when they're powerful and connected and have armies of lawyers. You can draw a line and say, this far, no further. And when that line gets crossed, there are real consequences that happen in real time. That precedent matters. It changes expectations. It emboldens other judges to take similar stands. The media coverage has been intense. Video of the courtroom moment went viral. Legal experts are doing breakdown after breakdown. This is trending everywhere because people recognize they're watching something significant. Not just another news cycle story that fades in a week, but an actual turning point in how justice gets applied. And for Trump, this is the worst case scenario. Because you can fight charges, you can challenge evidence, but you can't fight testimony from your own people. You can't discredit people who were loyal for years and have no obvious reason to lie, and you can't stop the cascade once it starts. Each person who flips makes the next flip more likely. The protection that silence provided is gone. The strategy that worked for so long has completely fallen apart. So where does this go from here? More indictments, probably. More cooperation agreements. More dramatic courtroom moments as judges stop tolerating obstruction. More evidence coming to light that expands the scope of what people knew and when they knew it. This isn't winding down, it's ramping up. And that's why this moment matters so much. Because it's not just about one arrest or one set of flip witnesses. It's about the system finally actually holding powerful people accountable in real time with real consequences. That's the shift. That's the story. Okay, let's break down what this actually means. Because we've covered what happened, now we need to understand why it matters and what comes next. And we're going to do this in clear, simple points so nobody walks away confused. Point 1, the inner circle is collapsing. For years, Trump's defense against legal trouble has been a wall of loyal people who wouldn't talk. Lawyers who fight every subpoena, aides who'd invoke privilege, associates who stay quiet. That wall just crumbled. Once people start flipping, the whole strategy falls apart. You can't maintain a unified defense when half your team is cutting deals with prosecutors, and you definitely can't keep secrets when those people are handing over documents and testimony. This isn't a small crack, this is a structural collapse, and it's happening fast because each person who flips makes the next person more vulnerable and more likely to flip themselves. The domino effect is real, and right now, it's accelerating. Each new cooperator gives prosecutors more ammunition to pressure the next target, and that creates an environment where loyalty becomes a liability instead of an asset. People are realizing that going down with the ship isn't noble, it's just stupid. Point 2, judges are done playing games. The immediate arrest order isn't just about one attorney, it's about judicial patience running out. The immediate arrest order isn't just about one attorney. For years, cases involving Trump and his allies have been characterized by delay tactics, procedural challenges, appeals, and endless legal maneuvering. And courts generally allow that because that's how the system works. Everyone gets their day in court. Everyone gets to mount a defense. But when that defense crosses into obstruction, when lawyers start making misrepresentations or committing perjury, when the whole thing becomes about gaming the system rather than seeking justice, judges can say enough. And that's what happened here. The message being sent is clear. We're not waiting anymore. We're not tolerating obstruction anymore. The process moves forward, and if you get in the way, there are immediate consequences. This shift in judicial temperament is significant because it changes the calculus for everyone involved in these cases. You can't just run out the clock anymore. You can't bank on endless delays wearing down prosecutors or public interests. The courts are saying, we're moving forward, and you're either going to participate in good faith or you're going to face consequences. Point 3. This is the most powerful kind of evidence. Look, prosecutors can build cases on documents and circumstantial evidence. They do it all the time. But in conspiracy cases, insider testimony is gold. Why? Because it provides direct evidence of intent and planning. When someone who was in the room says, yes, we discussed doing this illegal thing, here's what was said, here's who agreed to it, that's devastating to a defense. You can't argue that it's all a misunderstanding or that actions were taken in good faith when someone with firsthand knowledge says otherwise. And that's what prosecutors are getting now. Multiple witnesses with direct knowledge, documents to back up their testimony, the kind of evidence that makes jury trials very short. This is the difference between a circumstantial case that requires jurors to connect dots and a direct evidence case where the dots are already connected. It's the difference between maybe and definitely. And in criminal cases, that difference is everything. Point 4, the scope is expanding, not contracting. Here's what people need to understand. When witnesses start cooperating, they don't just confirm what investigators already know. They reveal new information, new incidents, new participants, new potential crimes. This investigation isn't wrapping up, it's growing. Every cooperation agreement leads to new questions and new avenues to explore. And that means more people are going to get swept up. More indictments are coming. More arrests are coming. The story isn't ending, it's entering a new phase where the consequences get more serious and more widespread. Think of it like pulling a thread on a sweater. You start with one thread, and suddenly the whole thing starts unraveling. That's what's happening here with each new cooperating witness. They're not just giving prosecutors what they asked for, they're revealing entire new areas of potential criminal activity. So what happens next? Let's game this out. More allies will flip, that's almost certain, because right now, anyone still in Trump's orbit who has legal exposure is doing the math, and the math says cooperation is the smart move. Prosecutors have momentum, they have evidence, they have witnesses. Fighting becomes harder and riskier with each passing day, so expect more cooperation agreements, more people deciding that protecting themselves is more important than protecting Trump. The incentive structure has shifted dramatically, and that's going to drive behavior in predictable ways. More aggressive judicial action, Other judges in other cases are watching this. They're seeing that yes, you can hold people accountable even when they're powerful and well connected. They're seeing that immediate consequences are possible, so expect other courts to take a harder line on obstruction and delay tactics. The days of endless procedural fights with no consequences, those might be over. This creates a new precedent that changes how these high-profile cases get handled moving forward. More evidence will come to light. As cooperating witnesses provide testimony and documentation, new leads will emerge, new subpoenas will be issued, new evidence will be gathered. This creates a feedback loop where each piece of evidence leads to more evidence. The political fallout will be significant because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Trump is serving his second term, his allies are in positions of power, and now multiple people from his inner circle are cooperating with prosecutors and exposing potential criminal conduct. That's a crisis that undermines trust within the remaining loyalists. It creates paranoia about who else might flip. It makes coordination difficult because nobody knows what prosecutors already know. Politically, this is chaos. Public opinion matters here too, because as more evidence comes out, as more insiders testify, as more details about planning and cover-ups emerge, public perception shifts. The narrative that this is all a witch hunt becomes harder to maintain when your own people are the ones providing evidence. And look, we need to talk about what this means for accountability writ large. Because for years, there's been this sense that certain people are above the law, that no matter what evidence exists, no matter what wrongdoing occurred, nothing really happens. There are investigations and hearings and strongly worded statements, but no real consequences. This moment challenges that narrative. This is a judge saying no, there are consequences. This is prosecutors actually building cases with real teeth. This is insiders deciding that loyalty doesn't protect you from prison. Does that mean justice is guaranteed? No. There are still trials to be held, appeals to be filed, legal battles to be fought, but the trajectory has shifted. The assumption that powerful people can delay and obstruct indefinitely, that's being challenged in real time with real consequences. So, is this the beginning of the end? Is this the moment where everything finally catches up? Maybe. We'll see. But what's clear is that something significant has shifted. The protective wall has crumbled, the judicial patience has run out, the evidence is expanding, and the consequences are real and immediate. This isn't another story that fades in a week. This is a turning point, a moment where the system stops waiting and starts acting, where loyalty gets replaced by self-preservation, where obstruction meets actual consequences. And we're going to keep watching as this unfolds. Because if this is really the start of accountability, if judges continue to draw hard lines and insiders continue to flip and evidence continues to expand, then we're witnessing something historic. The kind of moment people will look back on and say, that's when things changed. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started.